here today with Caroline Kennedy, who is the editor of A Family Christmas, which is a collection of poems, passages, and holiday stories. Thanks very much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So the book is a wonderful collection, a very varied and unusual collection of stories that you spent a lot of time obviously pulling together. Everyone from poets like Billy Collins and E. E. Cummings to Mark Twain to David Sedaris to Run DMC. How did you come to collect these many different types of stories for the holiday?
Well, when I started this book, I really wasn't sure that there would be a lot of things that I wasn't familiar with about Christmas. I really figured that, I mean, Christmas is all around us. It's something we take for granted, and we typically see the same readings over and over again. So when I got into it, though, I realized that there are so many levels. There's such complexity to Christmas. The history of Christmas is so interesting. And then obviously there's the religious dimension, but there's a huge social, cultural, humorous dimension to Christmas that I think is really worth celebrating as well.
The research was exhaustive. Clearly you spent a lot of time digging and finding some of these like old facts and figures and information about holidays and just finding letters and notes. How did you research this? What did you do? Where did you spend your time?
Well, I read a lot of anthologies, which there are, and of course I have 3 children and I've been celebrating Christmas all my life, so I felt like I already had a head start. But I went to the Library of Congress, which is an incredible place. And there was a letter from Groucho Marx there, and
do you look up Christmas, or do you just like, where do you start?
Yeah, well, you know, actually, there are people who are Christmas fanatics all over the place, and so all you really have to do is say, you know, I'm really interested in Christmas, and people have a lot of favorite things that they want to share as well. So the librarians, they were terrific, and then there's, you know, tons more that didn't make it into the book, but and there's a letter from George Washington crossing the Delaware. So I think Christmas is really part of our history in a really interesting way, and it's really become, I think, a patriotic holiday. I mean, it has that dimension to it, as well as you know, new immigrant groups who come here often celebrate Christmas, even if it's not the religious, but they get involved in the kind of civic celebration. So I think there's just so much, and so wherever you look, I think, you know, there's things to do. I've done poetry books before, so I wanted that to be part of this, and I spent a lot of time looking through other anthologies, whether they were African American or Hispanic. There's lots of obviously huge traditions in the Hispanic community that were new to me, so that was fascinating also.
You mentioned poetry. Poetry is obviously something that's played a really important part of your life, and I know from the things that you mentioned in the book that poetry was a big part of your family's life growing up and around Christmas time especially. What is it about poetry that you find so special, especially as it relates to the holidays?
Well, we're better at poetry than at cooking in my family. So poetry was always, and words and reading were something that my mother and father, but really my mother encouraged so much in us, and it was something that she grew up with. And so for Christmas we would always pick out a poem or write a poem or a Bible verse and illustrate that for her. And for my grandparents. And so I have all these poems that we did, and I have the ones that she made for her mother. So it's a really nice tradition, and it's a really, I think it's been wonderful for my children to be able to connect with their grandparents or their grandmother at the same age that they are now. So it's, I think that's one of the things about Christmas that really is such a comfort, that it comes around every year, and there's a comfort and a ritual to it that I think kind of spans generations, and is really one of the special aspects.
Yeah, along the lines of poetry, do your children love poetry as well? Have they embraced this like you have?
Well, they're getting there. It depends. My son actually writes a lot of humor. They're studying it in school. I mean, there's school and then there's out of school. So, but I think poetry is something that if you're exposed to it when you're young, you'll come back to it later on, because I think there's a long period of life where people think poetry is boring, or it's hard, or it's intimidating, or they don't understand it. But I think if kids are exposed to it, they lose that fear, and then maybe later they'll pick it up again.
Well, you treat a lot of the holiday songs and even lyrics from musicians like John Lennon or Run DMC, like we mentioned earlier, almost as poems. I mean, you include the lyrics here, and they read almost like a poem in many cases.
Well, a lot of the Christmas songs really obviously are so beautiful. A lot of them are written by great poets. I mean, the old traditional carols as well as the newer songs. And so I really tried to use and choose songs that would read well on the page, because a lot of them maybe are more better suited to singing, but I tried to choose the more the literary ones.
You know, one of the other really special things about the book, I think, is that you include a lot of yourself in here, and you include a letter, in fact, that you wrote to Santa when you were very young. And in fact, you know, everyone in my family thought it was very big of you at that age to remember your brother.
That's so nice, because that letter is so embarrassing, and it wasn't my choice to put it in, but I was talked into it. So
it's
anyway,
incredible.
I did come off well, because I did remember my brother. It's true.
Did you get the farm that you asked for?
I doubt I got much of what was on the list, but I don't remember exactly. I think I had a plastic farm.
Yeah, what's wonderful about that note is that for you, you asked for toys and pretty things and a farm, and I think there might have been a pony in there. And for your brother, you asked for rumbly, loud things that you can claddle around in, you know.